Arrows rained down on the witch queen when her magic failed. The crowd scattered in terror. Only one man stayed, a poor single dad buying medicine for his sick daughter. He grabbed a fallen shield and threw himself between the witch queen and death. What he didn't know, his touch awakened a power the kingdom thought was lost forever. And she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 centuries. The morning sun barely touched the cobblestones when Queen Seraphina felt her magic drain away like water through cracked fingers. She stood in the center of Silver Forest's market square, disguised in a merchant's cloak, watching vendors arrange autumn vegetables and children chase each other between stalls. This was her favorite tradition, walking among her people during the harvest blessing, invisible and ordinary. For one day each year, during the solar eclipse, she wasn't the witch queen. She was just another woman buying bread. But that same eclipse stripped away her power completely. "Your Majesty, we should return to the carriage," Captain Thorn whispered beside her, his hand hovering near his sword. 3 royal guards stood nearby, dressed as common travelers, scanning the crowd with trained eyes. Seraphina shook her head. "The people need this blessing. It's been tradition for 300 years. She raised her hand toward the harvest altar, preparing the ceremonial spell. The words formed on her lips, ancient, sacred. The first arrow screamed past her ear. It struck the wooden post behind her with a sickening thud, its shaft glowing with purple curse marks that sizzled against the wood. Screams erupted across the market. A second arrow followed, then a third, all aimed directly at Seraphina's heart. "Ambush! Protect the queen!" Captain Thorn shoved her backward, his sword drawn. But the arrows weren't ordinary. They curved midair, tracking her movements like hunting hawks. Dark magic, illegal, forbidden, and designed specifically to kill witches when their power was weakest. Seraphina's guards formed a circle around her, shields raised. More arrows rained down from the rooftops, each one glowing with that same deadly curse. The market dissolved into chaos. Vendors abandoned their carts. Parents grabbed their children and fled. Horses reared and kicked over stalls. "We need to draw them away from civilians," Thorn shouted. "Fall back to the western road." The guards began retreating, pulling the assassins' attention away from the crowd. Seraphina ran with them, her powerless hands trembling. Without magic, she was just flesh and bone, vulnerable, mortal, terrified. An arrow grazed her shoulder. Pain exploded through her arm. She stumbled, catching herself against a stone cart filled with apples that scattered across the ground. Another arrow sailed toward her exposed back. Someone slammed into her from the side. Seraphina hit the cobblestones hard. The breath knocked from her lungs. A heavy body covered hers. The arrow that should have killed her struck a wooden shield instead, embedding deep with a sharp crack. "Stay down," a man's voice barked above her. Seraphina looked up into the face of a stranger. He was perhaps 30, with rough hands and dust in his dark hair. His clothes were patched and worn. A carpenter, maybe, or a laborer. His brown eyes were wide with fear, but blazing with determination. He raised the shield, a guard's shield he must have grabbed from the ground, and blocked 2 more arrows in quick succession. The impact nearly knocked him over, but he held firm, protecting her with his body. "Who are you?" Seraphina gasped. "Nobody important," he said, breathing hard. "But I'm not letting them murder someone in front of my daughter." His hand gripped her arm to pull her further behind the cart. The moment his skin touched hers, Seraphina felt something impossible. Warmth. Power. A golden light pulsed beneath his fingers, so faint she almost missed it. But it was there, humming like a distant bell, resonating with something ancient buried deep in her bloodline memory. She hadn't felt an aura like this in over 200 years. "You," she started. "Move." He yanked her to her feet as the stone cart exploded behind them, shattered by curse magic. They ran together toward a narrow alley between 2 shops. Seraphina glanced back and saw her guards fighting desperately against shadowy figures on the rooftops, warlocks, by the look of their dark robes. Professional assassins. This wasn't random violence. This was an execution. "The forest," she told the stranger. "We need to reach the Whispering Woods. That's 2 miles through open ground. Do you have a better idea?" An arrow struck the wall beside her head, spraying stone chips across her face. The stranger, this nobody, this miracle, grabbed her hand and pulled her into the alley. His palm was calloused and strong, and that golden warmth pulsed stronger with each step. Behind them, Captain Thorne's voice rang out. "Protect the Queen. Hold them here." Her guards were buying them time with their lives. Seraphina's throat tightened, but she kept running. The stranger led her through a maze of back paths, moving with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of this town. They burst from the alley into a side street. Ahead, the forest's edge beckoned, dark trees and shadows where magic still lingered even during the eclipse. "I don't even know your name," Seraphina said, her lungs burning. "Rowan," he answered, not slowing down. "Rowan Fletcher." "Why didn't you run?" "Rowan Fletcher. Everyone else did." He glanced at her, and in his eyes she saw something rare, something she'd spent centuries searching for in nobles and warriors and champions. Simple, unshakable decency. "Because my daughter Mira taught me something," he said. "She says the world gets darker when good people stand aside." An 8-year-old's wisdom from a poor man's child. Seraphina felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time. They reached the forest's edge just as 3 more assassins dropped from the trees ahead, cutting off their escape. Curved blades gleamed in their hands. Seraphina tried to summon even a spark of magic, but the eclipse held her powerless. Rowan stepped in front of her, gripping his stolen shield, facing 3 trained killers with nothing but courage and carpenter's strength. "I really hope," he said quietly, "that you're worth dying for." Seraphina touched his shoulder. That golden warmth flared again, and impossibly, she felt a thread of her magic respond. Just a whisper, but it was there. "I think," she whispered back, "you might be the only reason I survived this day." The assassins attacked. The first assassin lunged with his blade aimed at Seraphina's throat. Rowan swung the shield like a battering ram, catching the man in the chest and sending him sprawling backward. The second attacker came from the side, but Rowan kicked a loose stone that struck the assassin's knee, buying them precious seconds. "Run!" Rowan shoved Seraphina deeper into the forest. They plunged into the Whispering Woods, branches clawing at their clothes and faces. Behind them, footsteps crashed through the undergrowth, too many footsteps. More assassins had joined the hunt. "This way." Rowan veered left onto a path so faint Seraphina could barely see it. "Lumber trail. They won't know it." He moved like a man born to these woods, ducking under low branches and leaping over roots without breaking stride. Seraphina struggled to keep pace, her shoulder bleeding where the arrow had grazed her. Every breath felt like fire in her lungs. An arrow hissed past her ear and embedded in a tree trunk. "They're gaining," she gasped. Rowan's eyes scanned the forest frantically. Then he spotted something, an old lumber ramp built into the hillside, designed for rolling logs down to the valley. Without hesitation, he grabbed a thick branch and wedged it under the nearest stack of cut timber. "When I say run, run sideways, not forward." He threw his weight against the branch. The stack groaned, shifted, then broke free with a thunderous crack. Massive logs tumbled down the slope, crashing through the forest like wooden avalanches. "Now!" They dove to the right as the logs roared past, flattening everything in their path. Screams echoed behind them as at least 2 assassins were caught in the cascade. But more kept coming. Seraphina's magic stirred weakly inside her, responding to the danger, but refusing to ignite. She tried to summon a barrier spell, whispering the ancient words, but only sparks flickered at her fingertips before dying. "It's not working," she said, frustration burning in her throat. "Then we don't stop moving." Rowan pulled her toward a rocky outcrop. There's a ridge ahead with loose stone. We can trigger a mudslide. How do you know all this? Spent 10 years logging these woods to feed my daughter. You learn every trick or you don't survive winter. They reached the ridge, and Rowan immediately began kicking at the supporting rocks beneath the muddy slope. Seraphina joined him, her hands scraping against stone. The assassins' voices grew louder, 40 yards away, maybe less. Come on, Rowan muttered, slamming his shoulder against a boulder. It shifted. Mud began to slide. Then everything let go at once. A wave of earth and stone crashed down the hillside, cutting off the path behind them. They heard angry shouts, then silence. Rowan leaned against a tree, breathing hard. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. That won't stop them long. These aren't common thieves, they're professionals. Seraphina closed her eyes, reaching desperately for her magic. This time, something different happened. That golden warmth she'd felt when Rowan touched her, it pulsed stronger now, like a beacon calling to her power. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Give me your hand, she said. What? Trust me. Rowan hesitated, then placed his rough, calloused hand in hers. The moment their skin connected, Seraphina felt her magic surge. Not fully. The eclipse still weakened her, but enough. Enough to matter. She whispered a shielding spell, and this time it worked. A shimmering barrier materialized around them, faint but real, glowing with golden threads that seemed to originate from Rowan himself. His eyes went wide. What? What is that? You, Seraphina breathed. Your presence is amplifying my magic. How is that possible? Before he could answer, an arrow struck the barrier and disintegrated into ash. 3 more assassins emerged from the trees, their faces hidden behind dark masks. They surrounded the barrier, testing it with their blades. The queen is weakened, one hissed. That shield won't last. Kill them both. Rowan's jaw tightened. He positioned himself between Seraphina and the nearest attacker, shield raised. I don't understand what's happening, he said quietly, but if my being here helps you stay alive, then I'm not going anywhere. You should, Seraphina told him. You have a daughter waiting for you. This isn't your fight. He glanced back at her, and his expression was fierce. If someone wants you dead badly enough to attack during the eclipse, they're planning something worse. Whatever happens to you will hurt the whole kingdom, including Mira. So yes, this is my fight. The barrier flickered. Seraphina's strength was fading. But Rowan squeezed her hand tighter, and she felt that golden warmth flow stronger, like roots connecting deep underground. Her magic stabilized. The barrier brightened. One assassin stepped closer, studying Rowan with sudden interest. That aura.
No.
The Guardian bloodline was exterminated. What bloodline? Rowan demanded. The assassin raised his blade. It doesn't matter. You'll both be dead before sunset. Seraphina felt her magic gathering, fed by Rowan's presence, growing stronger than it should be possible during an eclipse. Something ancient was awakening, something the kingdom had thought lost forever. If you want her dead, Rowan said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes, you'll have to go through me first. The assassins attacked together, and Seraphina's magic exploded outward like a golden star. The explosion of golden light sent the assassins stumbling backward, shielding their eyes. Seraphina's barrier expanded into a blinding wave that swept through the forest, and for one precious moment, her full power returned, brilliant and terrible. The assassins scattered into the shadows, retreating but not defeated. Seraphina collapsed against Rowan, the magic draining from her as quickly as it had come. The eclipse was passing, but she'd spent everything she had left. We need to move, Rowan said, catching her weight. My village is a mile north. They won't expect us to hide somewhere so ordinary. Your home? I'll bring danger to your doorstep. The danger's already here. At least at my cottage, we'll have walls and a door I can bar. He half-carried her through the forest as dusk settled over the trees. By the time they reached his village, a small cluster of humble cottages on the forest's northern edge, Serafina could barely stand. Her disguise cloak was torn and muddy, her shoulder still bleeding. Rowan's cottage was small and weathered, with a thatched roof and a tiny garden out front. He kicked the door open and guided her inside to a simple wooden chair by the hearth.
Papa.
A small girl burst from the bedroom, her face flushed with fever. She couldn't have been more than 8, with tangled brown hair and her father's warm eyes. But she stopped short when she saw Serafina, those eyes going wide. "Mira, sweetheart, go back to bed," Rowan said gently, kneeling beside his daughter. "You're still sick." But Mira didn't move. She stared at Serafina with an expression far too knowing for a child. Slowly, she walked forward and placed her small hand on Serafina's knee. "Papa," she whispered. "She feels warm, like sunlight." Serafina's breath caught. This child could sense magic, untrained, unrefined, but real. She looked at Rowan with new understanding. "Your daughter has the gift." "That's impossible. We're just common people. No magic in our family. Never has been." "Then explain how she knows what I am." Myra's fever-bright eyes studied Serafina's face. "You're hurting," she said simply. "Can you make the bad feeling go away? Like you make the flowers grow?" Despite everything, the attack, the fear, the exhaustion, Serafina smiled. She cupped Myra's feverish cheek and summoned what little magic remained. A soft golden glow spread from her palm, gentle and warm. The fever began to recede, color returning to Myra's pale face. The child sighed with relief and leaned into her father's arms. "How did you?" Rowan's voice was thick with emotion. "She's been sick for 3 days. Nothing helped. A simple healing. The least I can do for the man who saved my life." Serafina's hand dropped, trembling. "Though I may have just confirmed what the assassin suspected. Your daughter carries the same aura you do. Dormant, but present." Rowan settled Mira back into bed, tucking blankets around her. When he returned to the main room, his expression was troubled. He barred the door, checked the shutters, then finally sat across from Serafina. "Who are you really?" he asked quietly. "Those men called you the Queen. There was no point in hiding it now. Queen Serafina of the Witch Territories. I've ruled for 372 years." Rowan's face went pale. "I tackled a queen. I grabbed the actual queen and—" "You saved my life," Serafina interrupted. "Don't apologize for that." Outside, voices drifted through the village. Rowan cracked the shutter and peered out. Villagers were gathered in the lane, talking urgently. He listened, his expression darkening. "News from the capital," he said. "The queen has gone missing. There's a kingdom-wide search." He paused. "They're also saying some of your nobles are blaming you for abandoning your post during the eclipse, calling it reckless." Serafina's blood went cold. "What?" The Witch Council issued a statement. "They say you endangered the kingdom by leaving the palace unprotected during your weakest time." "That's absurd. This blessing ceremony has been tradition for centuries. Every queen before me—" She stopped, understanding flooding through her. "They knew. The council knew when and where I'd be." "You think your own people set this up?" "The timing was perfect. The location, isolated. The curse arrows, specifically designed to kill weakened witches." Serafina stood, pacing the small room despite her exhaustion. "Someone in my inner circle wants me dead and is already preparing the political ground to justify it." Rowan was quiet for a long moment. "Then you can't go back." "Not yet. Not until you know who to trust. I'm the queen. I can't hide in a carpenter's cottage while my kingdom—" "Your kingdom thinks you're missing or dead. Going back now, weakened and alone, with traitors in your own council?" He shook his head. "That's not bravery. That's suicide." Serafina wanted to argue, but he was right. She sank back into the chair, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her chest. Someone she trusted, someone close enough to know her schedule, her routes, her vulnerabilities, had ordered her assassination. From the bedroom, Myra's voice called out softly. "Papa? Is the Sunlight Lady staying?" Rowan looked at Serafina, and despite everything, his expression was kind. Yes, sweetheart. She's staying where it's safe. He met Serafina's eyes across the dim cottage. We'll figure this out. But tonight you rest. Tomorrow we plan. Serafina nodded slowly, accepting shelter from a poor carpenter and his gifted daughter. Sometimes, she realized, the strongest walls weren't made of stone. Dawn broke cold and gray over the capital city. Serafina stood before the mirror in Rowan's cottage, trying to make herself presentable. Her gown was ruined, her hair tangled with leaves and dirt. She looked nothing like a queen, and perhaps that was exactly what she needed to see. Stripped of crown and power, she was just a woman who'd survived an assassination by sheer luck and one man's courage. Are you certain about this? Rowan asked from the doorway, Mira holding his hand. I need answers. And I need to know who I can still trust. Serafina turned to face them. The Hall of Ancestors will tell us the truth about your bloodline. If my enemies fear what you are, then we need to understand why. The journey back to the capital took 3 hours by cart. Rowan kept his head down, uncomfortable in borrowed formal clothes that didn't quite fit. Mira sat between them, her eyes wide as they approached the towering crystal spires of the Witch Citadel. Guards recognized Serafina immediately and rushed them through the gates. Within minutes, the entire palace was in uproar. Your Majesty! High Counselor Morgoth swept into the throne room, his silver robes billowing. Behind him came the other council members, 6 powerful witches and warlocks who helped govern the kingdom. Their faces showed relief, but Serafina noticed something else underneath. Calculation. Thank the stars you're alive, Morgoth said. We feared the worst when your guards returned without you. Where is Captain Thorne? Serafina demanded. Recovering from his injuries. He and 2 others survived the ambush. Morgoth's gaze shifted to Rowan and Mira with barely concealed disdain. And these? Commoners? This man saved my life. He's under my direct protection. Counselor Lyra, a sharp-faced woman with ice-white hair, stepped forward. Protection? Your Majesty, we must insist this man be examined immediately. How did a powerless human manage to escort you through an attack that killed trained royal guards? It's suspicious. Suspicious? Rowan's voice was quiet but firm. I was buying medicine for my daughter when arrows started flying. I did what anyone decent would do. No one is anyone when they survive what should have been impossible, Lyra countered. For all we know, you're part of the conspiracy. Perhaps you were planted to gain the Queen's trust. Serafina felt anger flash through her. Counselor Lyra, this man took arrows meant for me. He asked for nothing. Then he won't mind proving his innocence in the Hall of Ancestors, Morgoth interrupted smoothly. The ancient stones can detect lies and dark magic. If he's truly innocent, he has nothing to fear. It was a trap, Serafina realized. If she refused, they'd claim she was compromised. If she agreed, they'd twist whatever the stones revealed to their advantage. But she also needed answers. Fine, she said coldly. We go to the hall. All of us. The Hall of Ancestors was the oldest part of the citadel, carved from a single massive crystal that predated the kingdom itself. Ancient runes covered every surface, glowing faintly with accumulated magic from centuries of royal ceremonies. Rowan stood in the center of the hall, looking small and out of place. Mira clutched his hand, frightened by the stern faces of the council members surrounding them. Place your hand on the judgment stone, Morgoth instructed, pointing to a black crystal altar. Rowan did as he was told. The moment his palm touched the stone, every rune in the hall blazed to life. The council members stumbled backward in shock. Serafina's breath caught in her throat. Golden light erupted from the stone, racing along the floor in intricate patterns. The walls sang with ancient power. And directly above Rowan's head, words materialized in the air, burning letters written in the old language. The child of the powerless shall guard the heart of the moon. No, Counselor Lyra whispered. That's impossible. Seraphina stepped forward, reading the prophecy she'd only heard in legends. The Moon Guardians. The Protector bloodline. They were wiped out. Another counselor protested. The Guardian Wars ended 200 years ago. Every last one was. Apparently not every last one, Seraphina said quietly. Rowan pulled his hand from the stone, looking bewildered. What does this mean? It means, Seraphina told him, your ancestors were the legendary protectors of Witch royalty. Moon Guardians could amplify magic, resist curses, and sense danger before it struck. They were bonded to the crown itself, bodyguards chosen by fate, not by training. Mira tugged her father's sleeve. Papa, I feel warm again. Like in the forest, the golden light hadn't faded. It pulsed around both father and daughter, responding to Seraphina's presence. Counselor Morgatha's expression had gone cold. This changes everything. If the Guardian bloodline has returned, then ancient laws apply. Laws that give commoners power over nobility. The balance of the kingdom. The balance. Rowan's voice cut through the hall like a blade. You're worried about power while assassins are hunting your queen? While someone in this very room probably planned her death. Silence fell like a stone. How dare you accuse? Lyra began. He's right, Seraphina said flatly. Someone knew exactly when and where to strike. Someone with access to my private schedule. The council members exchanged glances. Fear, calculation, and something darker passed between them. Morgath drew himself up. Your Majesty, this man must be placed under palace watch. For his own safety, of course. And the child should be studied. No one touches them, Seraphina said, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. They're under my protection. Challenge that, and you challenge me directly. The hall hummed with tension and ancient magic. Rowan stood at the center of it all, a poor carpenter who'd just discovered he was the last of a legendary bloodline. 3 days of training had turned Rowan's entire body into one massive bruise. He blocked the practice sword aimed at his ribs, but his opponent, a palace guard named Kellen, swept his legs out from under him. Rowan hit the ground hard, dust exploding around him. You're thinking too much, Kellen said, offering a hand. A guardian's instincts should be faster than thought. I'm a carpenter, Rowan groaned, accepting the help up. My instincts are for measuring wood and hammering nails. Around the training yard, other guards practiced their drills, pointedly ignoring the commoner who'd been thrust into their ranks. Seraphina watched from the colonnade above, her expression unreadable. She'd insisted on this, preparing Rowan for the dangers that would inevitably come. But 3 days of bruises hadn't made him a warrior. Again, Kellen commanded. They sparred for another brutal hour. Rowan improved slightly. His carpenter's strength helped, and his reflexes were sharper than expected, but he lacked the fluid grace of trained fighters. Every movement felt forced, uncertain. When the session finally ended, Rowan limped to the water barrel and dunked his head. Mira ran over from where she'd been watching, her face worried. Papa, you're bleeding again. Just a scratch, sweetheart. He touched the cut above his eye and winced. Nothing compared to when you knocked over that lumber pile on my head, remember? She didn't smile at the joke. The other children won't play with me. They say we don't belong here. Rowan's jaw tightened. The palace had given them a room in the servants' quarters, comfortable but isolated. Noble children were forbidden from associating with Mira, and the servants' children were too intimidated by her connection to the queen. We'll figure it out, he promised, though he had no idea how. That evening, Seraphina summoned them to the royal library. The vast chamber was empty except for her, surrounded by stacks of ancient texts. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes from nights spent researching the Guardian bloodline. I need to test something, she said without preamble. Stand beside me, Rowan. He approached cautiously. Seraphina raised her hand, whispering a spell. Blue flames appeared above her palm, flickering weak. Now closer. Touch my shoulder. The moment Rowan's hand made contact, the flames roared to life. They burned twice as bright, casting dancing shadows across the library walls. Seraphina's eyes widened. Extraordinary, she breathed. Every spell I cast is amplified when you're near. Not just stronger, more stable, more controlled. Is that what Guardians did? According to the texts, yes. They formed a symbiotic bond with the royal line. Your presence enhances my magic. In return, my magic awakens your dormant abilities. Curse immunity, enhanced strength, danger sense. Mira, who'd been exploring the bookshelves, suddenly gasped. She'd pulled a leather-bound tome from a high shelf, and it had fallen open in her hands. Golden light poured from its pages. Mira, don't touch, Seraphina started. But Mira was already tracing her fingers over an illustration of a crescent-shaped pendant. The drawing lifted from the page, becoming three-dimensional, rotating in the air above the book. The golden light intensified until they all had to shield their eyes. When it faded, a real pendant lay in Mira's palm, silver metal warm to the touch, inscribed with ancient runes. The Guardian's mark, Seraphina whispered, awe in her voice. It was hidden in the book for centuries, waiting for someone with the bloodline to claim it. Mira looked frightened. Did I do something wrong?
No, child.
You did something impossible. Seraphina knelt before her. You activated a forgotten artifact. That takes power, raw, untrained, but real. Rowan pulled his daughter close, protective. She's 8 years old. She should be playing with dolls, not activating magical weapons. It's not a weapon, Seraphina said gently. It's a key. And I think both of you are more critical to this kingdom's future than anyone realizes. Before Rowan could respond, bells began ringing throughout the citadel. Urgent, panicked clanging that meant only one thing.
Attack.
They rushed to the windows. In the courtyard below, guards were shouting and pointing at the sky. Dark shapes swooped between the towers, dozens of them, moving too fast to identify. Illusion magic, Seraphina said, her face going pale. The warlocks are back. Rowan's hand instinctively went to Mira's shoulder, but something felt wrong. The air around them shimmered strangely. He turned and saw 3 guards approaching from the library entrance, except their movements were too synchronized, too perfect. Those aren't real guards, he said. Seraphina spun, already casting a barrier spell. But the fake guards dissolved into shadow and reformed behind them, blocking the exit. More illusions materialized throughout the library, copies of servants, nobles, even Captain Thorne, all wearing the same empty expression. They're targeting children, Seraphina realized in horror. The alarm is a distraction. They're infiltrating the palace, too. One of the shadow guards lunged for Mira. Rowan threw himself between them, taking a slash across his arm. Pain exploded through him, but he didn't let go of his daughter. The Guardian's mark in Mira's hand began to glow, brighter and brighter, responding to the danger. Golden light spread from the pendant, racing across her skin like lightning. Mira, Rowan shouted. But his daughter's eyes had gone completely gold. Power radiated from her small frame, wild, uncontrolled, ancient. The shadow guard shrieked and dissolved. The library windows shattered outward. And somewhere in the distance, Rowan heard a sound that chilled his blood. Children screaming. The moonlit festival had transformed the palace gardens into a wonderland of floating lanterns and silver streamers. It was meant to celebrate Queen Seraphina's survival, a show of unity and strength after the assassination attempt. But Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Papa, look. Mira pointed to performers juggling orbs of colored fire. Children from noble families laughed and chased each other through the gardens, finally including Mira after the council had reluctantly acknowledged the Guardian bloodline's return. Seraphina stood on the grand balcony above, addressing the crowd. She wore her full regalia, crown glittering, robes flowing, every inch the immortal queen. But Rowan saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes constantly scanned for threats. Citizens of the realm, her voice rang out, magically amplified. Tonight we celebrate not just survival, but the return of an ancient alliance. The Moon Guardians have come back to us, proving that even in darkness, light finds a way. Polite applause rippled through the crowd, though Rowan noticed many nobles exchanging skeptical glances. The council had been forced to accept him, but they clearly didn't like it. A troupe of masked performers took the stage, their costumes elaborate, birds with feathered wings, wolves with silver fur, dancers in flowing silk. They began an acrobatic display, leaping and spinning to haunting music. Something about them made Rowan's skin prickle. He pushed through the crowd toward Mira, who was watching the performers with delighted wonder. The Guardian's mark pendant hung around her neck. Serafina had insisted she wear it for protection. "Mira, stay close to me," he said, taking her hand. "But Papa, they're about to do the finale." The music stopped abruptly. The masked performers froze mid-movement, then turned as one to face the crowd. Their eyes glowed purple beneath their masks, the same deadly purple as the curse arrows. "Warlocks!" someone screamed. Chaos erupted instantly. Parents grabbed their children and ran. Guards rushed forward with weapons drawn. But the performers moved with inhuman speed, their masks falling away to reveal twisted, shadowy faces. They weren't after the adults. They were targeting the children. Rowan saw it happen in horrible slow motion, 3 shadow creatures converging on Mira, ignoring everyone else. Their hands stretched into clawed shapes, reaching for the pendant around her neck. "No!" Rowan threw himself at the nearest attacker, tackling it to the ground. The creature's skin burned like ice where he touched it, but he held on, fighting with desperate strength. A second warlock grabbed Mira from behind. She screamed, and the Guardian's mark flared with golden light, but the warlock had wrapped her in dark magic that suppressed the pendant's power. "Mira!" Rowan fought free from the first creature and lunged for his daughter. A blade materialized from shadow and plunged into his side. Pain exploded through Rowan's body. He stumbled, blood soaking through his festival clothes. But he kept moving, kept reaching for Mira even as his vision blurred.
"Papa!"
Myra's terrified voice cut through the screaming crowd. The warlock lifted her off the ground, preparing to vanish into shadow. But Myra's fear and desperation overwhelmed the suppression magic. The Guardian's mark exploded with raw, uncontrolled power. A shockwave of golden light erupted from the child, so bright it turned night into day. The warlock holding her shrieked and dissolved. The blast wave swept across the entire garden, shattering illusions and sending attackers flying. Above on the balcony, Serafina felt it, a pulse of pure Guardian magic, calling to her like a beacon in a storm. She saw Mira surrounded by golden flames, saw Rowan bleeding on the ground trying to reach her, saw more warlocks closing in despite the blast.
"No," Serafina whispered.
She shouldn't teleport. The spell would drain her life force dangerously. But she didn't hesitate. Serafina spoke the ancient words and reality bent around her. She materialized in the center of the chaos, beside Mira, and threw up a barrier that caught 3 curse blades meant for the child. "You will not touch her," the queen said, her voice resonating with centuries of power. The warlocks regrouped, forming a circle around them. Their leader stepped forward, a tall figure in black robes with eyes like dying stars. "The child's aura will break the kingdom's barriers," he hissed. "With her power corrupted, your magical defenses will crumble. The old kingdoms will fall, and from their ashes." "You talk too much," Serafina snarled. She unleashed a torrent of magic that incinerated 2 warlocks instantly. But the spell took everything she had left. The backlash hit her like a physical blow, and she felt something tear inside, the cost of teleporting and casting beyond her limits. Serafina collapsed, blood trickling from her nose and ears. Mira dropped to her knees beside the queen, her golden aura fading to nothing, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Not your fault, brave one," Serafina managed to whisper. Rowan crawled to them, leaving a trail of blood, and wrapped his arms around both of them. His touch steadied Serafina's fading pulse, that golden warmth flowing from him even as his own life leaked away. Around them, palace guards finally overwhelmed the remaining warlocks. Captain Thorn reached them, his face pale with horror at the Queen's condition. "Your Majesty." "The child," Serafina breathed. "They wanted the child. They know. She's the key." Her eyes closed, and the garden fell silent except for Myra's broken sobbing. Rowan held them both, bleeding and terrified, as lanterns fell from the sky like dying stars. Serafina woke to the feeling of warmth against her skin. She was lying on something soft. A bed, she realized, and someone was holding her hand. That familiar golden pulse flowed through the touch, anchoring her to consciousness when her body wanted to slip away into darkness. "Rowan," she whispered. "I'm here." His voice was rough, exhausted. "Don't try to move," the healer said. "How long?" 6 hours since you collapsed. They had to stitch me back together, but his grip tightened. "They said you nearly died using that much magic. The teleportation alone should have killed you." Serafina opened her eyes. They were in her private chambers. Rowan sat beside the bed, bandages wrapped around his torso, his face pale but determined. Mira slept in a chair nearby, the Guardian's mark still glowing faintly around her neck. "She hasn't left your side," Rowan said. "Keep saying it's her fault you got hurt. It's not. It's..." Serafina sat up despite the protest of her body. "Where's Captain Thorn? What's happening?" As if summoned, Thorn burst through the door, his expression grim. "Your Majesty, thank the stars. We're under siege." "What?" "The warlock attack at the festival was a diversion. While we were distracted, their forces opened the shattered moongate in the ruins of Vesper. The forbidden portal." Serafina's blood went cold. The shattered moongate was an ancient weapon, a portal designed to swallow entire magical kingdoms, collapsing them into void. It had been sealed for 500 years, locked behind wards that required royal blood and dark magic to break. "How?" she demanded. "The seals should be impossible to breach." Thorn's jaw clenched. "High Counselor Morgoth is dead. Found in the ritual chamber with his throat cut. They used his blood to break the first seal." Morgoth was the traitor? Or another victim? "We don't know yet. But, Your Majesty, the portal is growing. If it reaches full power, it will consume the capital within hours. Everything within 50 miles will be pulled into the void." Serafina tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Rowan caught her instantly. "You can barely walk," he said. "You need more time too." "We don't have time," she met his eyes. "I have to close that gate, or everyone dies. Including Mira. Then I'm coming with you." "Rowan." No arguments, his voice was steel. "Whatever's happening to me, this guardian bloodline, this bond between us, it's kept you alive this long. You're not going into that battle without me." Mira stirred awake, her eyes red from crying. "I want to help too." "Absolutely not," both Rowan and Serafina said simultaneously. "But my power is too dangerous when you can't control it," Serafina said gently. "You'll stay here with the palace guards." "That's an order." Myra's lower lip trembled, but she nodded. 20 minutes later, Serafina and Rowan stood at the edge of the ruins of Vesper. Before them, the shattered moongate pulsed with sickly purple light, a massive tear in reality that grew larger with each passing second. Warlock forces surrounded it, feeding dark magic into the portal while their leader, a skeletal figure in rotting robes, chanted in a language that hurt to hear. "That's Valdris," Serafina said. "The Void Cultist. I thought we executed him a century ago." "Apparently not well enough," Rowan muttered. He carried a sword now, awkward in his carpenter's hands, but he held it ready. Serafina placed her hand on his shoulder, feeling their connection flare to life. Her magic surged, stronger than it had been in days. The bond between Guardian and Queen was fully awakened now, humming with ancient power. "When I cast she told him. Stay close. As long as we're touching, the spells will hold. What about curses?
You're immune now.
The bloodline protects you, she smiled grimly. The one advantage we have. They charged together into the ruins. Warlocks turned to face them, hurling curse bolts and shadow blades. But Rowan's presence made Seraphina untouchable. Her barrier spells crystallized into solid walls. Her fire magic burned white-hot instead of red. Every curse that touched Rowan simply dissolved against his skin like mist. They fought as one, Seraphina's magic flowing through Rowan's physical strength, his guardian aura stabilizing her wildest spells. When 3 warlocks surrounded them, Rowan grabbed Seraphina's wrist, and she channeled lightning through their joined hands, incinerating the attackers in one devastating blast. Valdris noticed them and shrieked with rage. Kill them! The queen and her pet human must not reach the gate. A wave of shadow creatures poured from the portal, but Rowan cut through them with surprising skill. Not trained technique, but pure instinct, his body moving faster than thought as the guardian bloodline fully awakened within him. They reached the portal's edge. The void inside screamed with the voices of lost kingdoms, pulling at reality itself. I need to reverse the spell, Seraphina shouted over the noise. It will take everything I have. You'll need to hold them off. How long? 2 minutes. Maybe 3 inch. Then you'll have 3 minutes, Rowan promised. Seraphina began the counterspell, her voice joining the ancient words that could seal the gate. Valdris screamed and flew toward them, death magic gathering in his skeletal hands. Rowan stepped between them, sword raised. You're just a human, Valdris snarled. I'm a father, Rowan said. And you threaten my daughter. He drove his blade through Valdris's heart just as Seraphina's spell reached its peak. The warlock leader's scream cut off abruptly as Rowan hurled his body into the collapsing portal. The shattered moongate imploded with a sound like reality tearing. Then silence. The morning sun rose over a kingdom that had nearly ceased to exist. Seraphina stood on the royal balcony, looking out at the celebrating crowds below. Banners flew from every tower. Music filled the streets. Children danced around fountains while their parents embraced, grateful to be alive. But inside the throne room, the mood was considerably colder. This is unprecedented, Counselor Lyra said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. You cannot seriously intend to. I can and I will, Seraphina interrupted. Rowan Fletcher saved this kingdom.
Twice.
He closed the shattered moongate when no one else could. He's earned far more than what I'm offering. The remaining council members, for now, after Morgatha's betrayal and death, stood before her throne. They'd spent the past hour arguing about Rowan's fate. Some wanted him rewarded with gold and sent away. Others wanted him studied like a curiosity. None wanted what Seraphina was proposing. The title of Royal Guardian hasn't existed for 400 years, another counselor protested. The position held power equal to the council itself. A commoner without authority would upset the entire social structure. Good, Seraphina said coldly. Perhaps the social structure needs upsetting. Perhaps if we hadn't become so obsessed with bloodlines and nobility, we would have noticed a traitor in our midst plotting to destroy everything. Silence fell. The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Captain Thorne, standing guard by the door, allowed himself a small smile. The decision is made, Seraphina continued. Rowan Fletcher will be named Royal Guardian at sunset. His daughter, Mira, will become the first human child permitted to study magic under palace protection.
These are not requests.
They are royal decrees. Counselor Lyra's jaw tightened, but she bowed stiffly. As you command, Your Majesty. The council filed out, their resentment palpable. Only Captain Thorne remained. You're making powerful enemies, he observed. I've had powerful enemies since the day I took the crown 3 centuries ago, Seraphina replied. At least these ones I can see coming. She left the throne room and walked through the palace gardens, needing air and space to think. The past week had shaken everything she believed about loyalty, power, and protection. She'd spent centuries surrounded by trained guards, powerful magic, and noble advisors, yet it took a poor carpenter with no training and no magic to truly keep her safe. She found Rowan in the training yard, despite his injuries, practicing sword forms with stubborn determination. Mira sat nearby, the guardian's mark glowing softly as she practiced lighting small magical flames in her palm, supervised by a very nervous palace instructor. "You're supposed to be resting," Seraphina said. Rowan lowered his sword, breathing hard. "So are you." They looked at each other for a long moment. Something had changed between them, forged in danger, sealed by trust, deepened by the bond of guardian and queen. But it was more than duty now. More than ancient bloodlines and prophecy. "Walk with me?" Seraphina asked quietly. They strolled along the garden paths while Mira continued her lesson. For a while, neither spoke, content just to exist in each other's presence. Finally, Rowan broke the silence. "The council hates this. Hates me. They'll learn to accept it. Will they? I'm a carpenter, Seraphina. I can barely hold a sword properly. I don't know court politics or ancient history or—" "You know courage," she interrupted. "You know loyalty. You know how to stand between danger and the people you protect." Even when every instinct screams to run, she stopped walking and faced him. Those qualities are far rarer than magical bloodlines or noble titles. Rowan was quiet for a moment. "That night in the forest, when I first grabbed your hand, I felt something I can't explain. Like I'd been searching for something my whole life without knowing it. The guardian bond," Seraphina said softly. "It's more than magic. It's recognition. Souls that were meant to stand together." "Is that all it is?"
Just
"Destiny and prophecy." Seraphina stepped closer, her heart beating faster than it had in decades. "I've lived for over 300 years, Rowan. I've known countless warriors, scholars, nobles, and heroes. I've been courted by kings and challenged by warlocks. But I've never known anyone who made me feel." "Feel what?" "Safe," she whispered. "Not because of your strength or your bloodline. Because of who you are. A good man. A loving father. Someone who sees me as Seraphina, not just the queen." Rowan reached up and gently touched her face, his calloused carpenter's hand warm against her cheek. "I don't know much about destiny or ancient bonds. But I know that when I look at you, I see someone worth protecting. Not because prophecy says so, but because I choose to. Even knowing I'll outlive you by centuries. Even knowing that," his smile was sad but genuine. "I'll protect you as long as I live. However long that is." Seraphina felt tears sting her eyes, something she hadn't allowed herself in 100 years. She leaned into his touch, and for the first time since the attack, she let herself simply feel. Fear, relief, gratitude, and something deeper. Something that felt dangerously like hope. From across the garden, Myra's delighted laugh rang out as she successfully conjured a small butterfly made of golden light. "She's going to be extraordinary," Rowan said proudly. "She already is. You both are." That evening, as the sun set over the capital, Queen Seraphina stood before her kingdom and named Rowan Fletcher the first royal guardian in 4 centuries. The crowd's reaction was mixed: confusion, skepticism, even scattered applause. But Seraphina didn't care. She looked at the carpenter-turned-protector standing beside her, at his brave daughter learning to control impossible power, and she knew. Sometimes the strongest shields weren't forged in royal armories. Sometimes they were built by simple hands and caring hearts. And sometimes the greatest magic wasn't found in spells or bloodlines. It was found in the courage to protect someone, even when the whole world said you weren't worthy.